surveillance isn't just to monitor everything I do, but it's to make me feel inferior. Like, why didn't I think just to put the light on? Well, most people in their homes, I think, are like me, where we know where things are. We wouldn't just keep putting lights on to look for stuff. And that's what I'm saying. Like, something about this is about trying to make me feel less than. And that does work. One of the tactics that they've accomplished to achieve, and I'm giving them credit for this, is to make me feel less than. So I told you the other day, I'm going to wear this Colleen Lopez top, which is so beautiful. And I'm going to do a video later to show you the full top. It fits perfectly. This is an extra small. I put my little tank on not because it needed it, but because of the surveillance. And they said they were afraid that something may show with the surveillance, and I don't want to give them the opportunity to shame me for anything. It's hard enough as it is going through this, but for me to make a mistake and then they shame me for it, I don't want to give them that opportunity. But I wanted just to let you guys know I'm going to do a review of this. It's beautiful, and it has this beautiful sleeve, so I'm going to show it the full top, and it fits perfectly. It's an extra small. I got it at Goodwill, and it's gorgeous. So I'll do a whole review on it later on. And I love watching Colleen on HSN. Today's lipsticks are the base coat is the lip balm from Dollar Tree that I keep telling you guys about. I like to use it as sort of to keep my lips moist. And then what I did was I combined the Yves Saint Laurent with the Estee Lauder lipstick. And I can't see the color, but maybe you guys can see it. But I'm going to open it up. I showed you the other lipstick yesterday. This has sort of like a shimmer. It's like a shimmery look to it. So I think it's pretty because usually I do pinks and reds, but this sort of shimmer, you can see how it shows up on camera. Okay, so I want to talk to you guys more about gangstalking and surveillance. Now, the biggest thing that we were talking about amongst ourselves who are going through this is like, why do they keep watching us, creating all these scenarios around us? Because they're surveilling us and they're keeping track of what we're doing. The hardest part that I've had to go through isn't just the talking to me and trying to correct everything I do, but trying to make me feel like what I'm doing isn't good enough, like they're superior. And part of why that's so hard for me is that I don't have a chance to just be myself. When they talked about making mistakes and they talked about it in terms of Catholic guilt, I always say, well, what's so wrong with making mistakes? Humans make mistakes. But in their way of looking at it, whenever I make a mistake, I'm inferior. I'm proving that I'm not good enough, that they just said I would need them. They just said that I would need them. That wouldn't be my thought. That wouldn't be my thought. My thought would be the opposite, which away from them, I wouldn't make these mistakes. You know what I mean? So when they're shouting things out and trying to add to our conversation, they're giving me their thought. Their thought process is that if they're around and I'm making mistakes, it means I need them. My thought process is that they're making me make these mistakes intentionally to make me go through a guardianship or custodianship. So I've gone from this point to what they said before. They used to say that to me. And the more I prove I don't need a guardianship or custodianship, the harder it is for them to stop, because they feel the more they do that and make me look like I'm stupid or make me feel that I'm stupid, the more it'll prove I need a guardian custodianship. Do you get what I'm saying? That's their thought process. So my thought process is the more they do this, the more it doesn't look like I need them around me. The other big deal about this is that when they started talking about these guardianships and custodianships, there were real cases like this. And there was a really good article I found where a lot of people in New York State were put into guardianships and custodianships without their consent or their family's consent. I wish I could find it right away, but I was on a different phone. They mentioned, the people talking to me mentioned that I have a 4G phone, so the voices don't sound the same on my phone. It really doesn't. I don't have the technology that would make this sound like it's just the phone. It's definitely some sort of advanced technology that they installed, and they, while I'm sleeping, they go over my head in the apartment above and sit in a chair and start to bang and start to try to disrupt my sleep, because they said I have to wake up at specific times. So for them, the specific times are usually 8 in the morning, 8 at night. Sometimes it's 6 something. They use something that to wake me up. They used to use like hitting me with some sort of technology. I think it's a laser, because I've shown pictures of tables that have the same shape marks as my body. And so they said they wake me up at these times. They just said conditioning. It's also because it's the frequencies they use. I found a Reddit post that someone asked about hypnosis, and that there's a neuroscience looking into the neuroscientists looking into this with connecting gangstalking with hypnosis. And that's part of what the more they surveil me, make suggestions, try to make me look stupid, and then use some sort of frequencies and hypnosis and talking, like going over the same things over and over and over again, the more they should be responsible for this. And instead of sitting behind their little curtain, the curtain should be yanked open and reveal who these people are, because they take responsibility for when things go wrong. So just like they want me to make mistakes, they have to be held accountable for their contribution to any mistake victims make. This is real technology, and this is really happening to people. The other point I want to make about surveillance is that they keep saying, like, I'll do something, just daily life. They think I'm doing it to please them. So they think, like, if I say or do something, I'm doing it because they're watching me. Didn't they say they were watching me for 50 something years? So that would mean in their minds, I would never have a moment to just be myself. I would always be on stage and performing. And that connects back to when I'm talking about how they manipulate people. The idea that I'm being manipulated to feel that I'm not good enough and that they have to always be there around me would mean that I would always be on stage. Do you see how that connects? So if I'm always being watched by them, and to be watched by them means they feel I'm performing, I would always be performing. When would I have a chance to be my true, authentic self if that's the case? But that's how they think. This is their mindset. The mindset is that I'm going to feel like the people who are abusing and stalking and harassing me are worthy of my being 100% genuine, running around doing everything perfectly, or else they'll try to find a way to take a custodian or guardianship against me. That's their mindset. And at that point, I would become what they want me to become. I would become somebody who has to say, when I was doing blah, blah, blah that they want credit for, it was because of them. I was performing for them. The next part about this is that they just said, don't I look so much older? I look exhausted. Okay. I want to name one video in all these years where I look refreshed, like I had a good night's sleep, when I excuse me, where I don't look exhausted. I look exhausted. They said, why don't you take off the glasses? Why do I have to? So when they're talking and they're saying things like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't they come from behind the curtain and reveal themselves? They said this is a program that they have used on other people, and they're trying to prove that they started using me in their program decades ago. And I'm saying decades ago, this wasn't happening. They said it's important that you guys know that it was happening before I worked at Lacoste because they want to clear Lacoste in this. And what I'm saying is Lacoste had the money and the means to know this was happening. And during the last few days I was there, two anonymous people came into the manager's office and they were part of this. So there was something going on. And I want to know, they said this is too disgusting. I want to know, how come people with all of the money and means never exposed this prior to me doing all of this? They didn't. And suddenly now we're going to try to change the date when this happened to me to prior to working at Lacoste. It's a lie. And I'm challenging everyone who knows this system to come forward. If they feel that I need guardianship after working at one company, then there's an issue. And they said that's going to make it look like it's the industries that people have always said it was: retail, publishing, media, banking, meaning those industries when the people, according to them, go through some sort of mental illness or have some sort of breakdown, it happens after working at those companies. And I don't think it's that. What I think it is that something happens and they're saying my name. I don't know what it's in reference to. I think something happens. In my case, I heard voices and I called the police and let them know about it. And now they want to change that it wasn't at Lacoste. It was definitely at Lacoste. The other big deal about this is that if you can cause people to lose sleep, have a difficult time finding work, have medical issues, we are as humans going to react to that. Those are major life events. And I did a whole video talking about stressful life events, moving, divorce, marriage, any crime, being a victim of any crime. And we were repeatedly crime victims at Lacoste. In this case, gangstalking, surveillance. These are major life events for me. So of course I'm going to have an emotional reaction to it. When talking to me 24/7, I used to do these videos on YouTube starting in 2014. The people doing this now said it wasn't good enough because I wasn't generating a lot of views. But I had, when I ended the account, I had over 200 and something thousand views. So if it wasn't good enough, then this channel isn't good enough with their contribution. And they don't want to acknowledge that. They don't want to acknowledge that if you're trying to contribute to my channels and you don't have many more views, actually they have 0 views, than my own work had, which means it wasn't always happening prior to all of this, then you can't judge. And that's what I'm trying to explain to them. They're proving me right. They are criticizing the old channel, which clearly they weren't involved in, which means this started after I worked at Lacoste. And this channel has so many more videos. Do you know how many videos I had when I had over 200 and something thousand views? I had about 40 something videos. This channel has almost 3,800 videos. They are not helping. They're trying to change this from something that I've documented, meaning once you call the police, it's documented. We shouldn't even be arguing about when the voices started. It was documented. But they expect me to sit here and argue to change the date. The other part about surveillance is, if I'm a company and I notice my employees are having a lot of break-ins, people are following the person around, it's endangering the customers, I would start investigating what the heck this is going on. When they tried to say that this was later, the people talking tried to say that maybe I was attracting it. No, it was happening worse before I got there. At one point, they said one day they had a break-in where people took entire racks of stuff, meaning the types of, I forgot how they call it now, the types of things that we're seeing on the news, today was happening prior to 2016 at a cost. And that's part of what I'm saying. If this was a pattern of, I don't know what the term is, of people, multiple people going into stores, stealing things, if it had been stopped back then, it wouldn't have been perfected now. These crimes that I'm seeing that started years ago that are being perfected now. So it's important that we stop these crimes today, because once the criminal mind hooks up with AI and creates a better way of doing it, it will be done later on. The next part about this is that when I'm talking to you about how exhausted I am, I fight them daily, I look tired, exhausted, and they are teaching me about head shapes that turns out to be part of our biometrics with facial recognition programming. How would I have known any of that? So, for example, I'm trying to do a straight, angle. So if you measure the distance between here to here to here, and you measure the distances on my face, you can put that into a computer and locate anyone who looks like me. Most people don't. They'll find a way to find just me. So when I'm showing pictures of myself from, I think I started with a yearbook picture from 8th grade to the present, and there's no criminal background, no mugshots, nothing that matches me, why should I be under constant surveillance? Well, because I was supposed to be a front for a fake business of this process. They said that I had always heard voices. If I had ever in my life heard voices, I'm not hearing voices now either. I'm hearing this technology. It would have been documented, because these people aren't trying to help me. They want to be superior to me. They would have forced this issue decades ago. They cannot. I don't have a criminal background. I don't have a pattern of mental illness. The other part about that is that once they started to talk about biometrics and facial recognition technology, they brought up racial features, which I think is racist. But they said, for example, some people have a shorter forehead. My forehead slants back. Do you guys notice that? When I started getting targeted, you'll notice the difference. This part of my forehead was so swollen that they said, people talking to me said, I started to look like a man. Like men have a strong brow bone, and it protrudes more than a female. So as you can see, it doesn't protrude as much. They changed the shape of my nose. They changed the jawline so that in different videos, as my face changed, my biometrics were changing. So when the swelling on top of my head started, my face became a completely different shape. It was like this part of my head was swollen. This part was rounder. I looked like a completely different person. I didn't have a jawline. So you can tell now my face looks different. And in a lot of videos, I've shown you pictures over the years so you can see my face never changed this way. They just mentioned in college when I was a little heavier, my face looked swollen. It wasn't. I was fatter. I was heavier. So when I got sick recently, I lost a lot of weight, but I've been doing milk with ice cream, with grape nut cereal, and I'm gaining the weight back. So you can see my face is heavier, but it looks different than it did before because of this technology. So I've shown you guys that picture when I was only like maybe 20 or 21, and my face was heavier. So I've shown you how naturally my face would have been heavier, but it wasn't swollen and it wasn't strategically swollen so that I would look different. So when we're talking about surveillance and facial recognition and biometrics, We're talking about people who know these things before the public knew it. So what I'm telling you is the people doing this to me were talking about things before most people in public understood what it meant. The other big point I wanted to make about that is that when we're talking about biometrics, we're talking about some aspects of race. They are racist. So, for example, they would say certain things to me about that are racist, but they would try to identify different groups by head shapes, which isn't accurate. We already know that. That's been done throughout history. So they're talking about things that historically we know that aren't just racist, but they're inaccurate. So when they're talking about, like I said, my forehead sloping back, which means they said that I would have like a highly African look, but then they said my head has more of a face shape like certain groups in Europe, meaning racially mixing and racial. It goes back to something that I was never taught in school, in any sort of biology class, it's not an American program. We don't learn to identify people's races by faces. The other big deal about that is that facial recognition varies in terms of identifying people of other races. Because I'm Black, facial recognition technology isn't as accurate for Black people. So for them to try to use this, they said wherever I go, they're going to be able to recognize me. They can make a mistake. Just like I'm being victimized, someone who may have similar features may be victimized by them if they're using this technology to track me. They said they believe, these are the people talking, that when in New York City, when I was a kid, again, I'm 52, so we're talking about Gen X, we were tracked by people to make sure we didn't go missing. That's a lie. We used to, in school, have our fingerprints taken, and that was to help if, we go missing. It wasn't this. They're trying to figure out when was the earliest time they can remember this being done. And what I'm asking them is, who gave them this technology? Why are they trying to remember things? If they say they can remember everything in my life, why can't they remember the biggest thing ever when they were doing this? Because they're liars. This may have been done in some way years ago, but it wasn't done this way. They can't say, oh, we've tracked you, we know everything about you, but we're asking people now. Why would you ask people now? You would go to the paperwork and the videos and everything you had from years ago, because they're fraudsters. They're trying to use me to create a program that makes people look mentally ill. And I'm doing this work every single day, all day, to fight them. So they're talking about something. What they do now is they say my name, but they start talking about other things. They said just now, mention the criminal bust that's going to happen today. That's the other thing they wanted to do. They wanted to make it seem like if I do lives, I'm endangering the world. I am not. They just said something. They're angry about something. So I usually do their emotional state based on their voice. They're very angry. I am not responsible for everyone's lives. So in order to make me feel that, they combine this with people who clearly have some sort of intelligence agency background. So it's they said it's like a parlor trick. It's like if you work for an intelligence agency, and I think it's the Mossad, which is an Israeli agency. They said because I worked at Tower Air, which was it's an American company, but run by an Israeli man. I started with Israel, having a connection to Israel decades ago. So they said in this that they falsely accused the person who told me about the Tower Air job as being Latino. She was not. She wasn't a Latina. So that was another lie of theirs. So they tried to make a connection that maybe someone Latino got me involved with Tower. That's a lie. Then they said one of the co-workers I had who used to take me with him because he worked at the job. He used to take me to JFK with him, who he happened to be Latino, is involved. He was not. So this would become something where they would just accuse everyone and anyone to avoid answering the question, when did this start? It would be documented if it were done like this, because today they're able to talk about things that happened during the 10 years they started doing this to me. So they're able today in 2026 to refer back to things that happened in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026. Because this is really now the intelligence agencies doing it. Then I don't know what it was, but I want the people talking to me to find that out. So when they are saying that when Tower Air, again, it was American, but it was run by an Israeli who was able to have a contract with Saudi Airlines for the Hajj. And the Hajj is Muslims going to and from Mecca. So when I got the job, I worked out of JFK. We had a training course. And during that time, they asked us who would like to do the Hajj, which means you live in Saudi Arabia. I signed up. I wanted to. I had just graduated from Fordham University, May of 1995. And I got the job with Tower Air in December of 1995. So it was only months, from when I graduated to getting the Tower Air job. Once I realized, I said, boy, what a great opportunity as a new college graduate to be able to travel, period, is a big deal because I had, money to pay back from school. It's a busy time in my life. So I took the job on the Hajj and I got a chance to live in Saudi Arabia, but we didn't fly under Tower Air. We flew under Saudi Airlines. So when these people are talking about all of this, do they really think that if I had that background, I would be the best person to put in this program? No. But it goes to show that from 1996 till now, we're talking 30 years ago, I have no background in, I have no criminal background. I have no terrorist background. I have no reason to have ever had any of that. And it's been proven I don't. So I would be the last person to be put into this program with people who have a criminal background, people who could want to hurt the United States. They said, I love this country. I really do. And I love New York, really love New York. They said they want to push me out of New York, which partially is why I fight every single day, because I love this city. So when they're telling me, because now I'm talking to them because they're still talking. When they're telling me this was a program always happening, then someone should have a record of it because of the background that I have, which would make me somebody who, if God forbid, people who want to hurt this city or country try to involve me, I call the FBI, I call the police, I call every law enforcement agency on earth to make sure that doesn't involve me. So for them to try to latch this, my YouTube channel, onto people who don't want to see the United States successful, who want to see us fail, it's the worst crime they've committed, even more so than every other crime. So I'm going to sit here now. I feel, they said, oh, you're talking so much. That's how they are. I'm talking so much. But I'm going to sit here and listen to whatever else the voices have to say, because this is a communication system. This isn't just talking to me. It's them talking to each other. And they don't want the United States to be successful. A strong United States will endanger other countries. Are they serious? A strong United States means that we are in less danger. We're not going to do a global socialism program where we have to be weaker in order to benefit other countries. They said the whole team is about to be fired. There should be no team. We're not going to weaken the United States in order for other countries to succeed. What countries? Name the countries you want to succeed. They said this challenge just took a nosedive. So I'm waiting now to see if they have anything to say other than this challenge just took a nosedive. Their international socialism where the United States can't be strong because if we're strong, we'll take advantage of other countries. They said, don't be so hammy. This makes the job of Lacoste better. They said, Shamega, we're not going to reschool you. Stop repeating everything they say, they said. They said this will be a formal indictment. So if they're talking to the people who they're going to bust, I guess this is going to, today's bust will be a formal indictment. She said just there when you rolled your eyes and shrugged your shoulder like that. That was a female voice. They said these aren't the voices on the TV. The voices aren't on the TV. I keep explaining this to them. The voices are out loud. They're not on the TV. They said, don't I sometimes get voices that sound like the television? When they are using the master antenna, Corp City has a master antenna. Anyone who lives here knows that. Then it will sound similar to whoever's talking on the TV, but not the same. It's not the TV. So meaning it's not the TV, it's the master antenna coming from Corp City, which means it's partially part of River Bay. What normally happens is it's not that. It's regular people talking. So at one point, let me just go off what they were talking about and try to explain. At one point, with how they were doing it was they were voice cloning like real celebrities. So if on television, a real celebrity, I'll just like hypothetically say like a celebrity on news, they would voice clone that person and try to make it sound similar, but it doesn't. What would happen is, and I've done videos where I've let people hear the technology on TV. It sounds like it's in between the words. So if the celebrity on television is saying Shamega, in between you'll hear Shamega, this is such and such. And then, so it doesn't sound like it's the celebrity. It's just voice cloning the celebrity. The other way they did it was just talking. So they used technology to put the talking in. The most recent way they're doing it to avoid using too much of the technology, which causes my face to swell, is they just have people shouting out the windows and shouting things out. So they said, didn't we just talk about your face swelling? Meaning now what they're trying to do with the voices is that if I'm talking, they'll try to think of a word or two that I would probably talk about. They just confirmed by saying that they said that, they just admitted that the technology they used before caused my face to swell. So in order to one-up me, make themselves feel superior, they've confirmed what I've been saying all along. The technology they used before caused my face to swell. When it became so bad, with the swelling. They changed it to people yelling out, which meant they moved people around me. So suddenly I'm in my apartment, and when I was doing the videos in the living room, people would open their doors, come out into the hallway, and use their cell phones to carry a message in the background of my videos to whomever. This is advanced technology. This is intelligence agency level technology. When I was on Twitter, they said, tell them about the time when someone from an ex-MI5 person communicated about voices on Twitter. I don't really have to tell you guys that, because a lot of people watching this are already familiar that this is intelligence agency technology. It's not technology I would have access to. So we clearly know it's not me. It's not my cell phone, which is only 4G, and it's like a low-level, cheap Android. It's not something that I've installed. They said at one point they would make people think it's a radio causing that constant hissing you sound. That constant hissing sound, when my head was being swelled with what I believe were microwave technology. That constant hissing sound in my ear was horrifying. Could you imagine how horrifying this is? It's so horrifying that it's only people who have absolutely zero souls, soulless people, could do this to a person and not come from behind their little curtain to hide themselves until they want to gain credit for something. They said the reason that they wanted to say they were involved in this is because in 2019, they felt that I discovered something. Maybe I did. They also said the elementary schoolmate knew that when we were in high school, I did a little drawing of a way that people could help people who are paralyzed walk. So when this really started going this way, they said they wanted to know if I remembered that. I remember that. So they said I invented something with that. Now, I'm not sure if I did or not, but they said they wanted to prove that I was the person who invented that. So now that I'm doing this, they said that they wanted to bring her in because that's how that part of that phase, it's all phases and it escalates, started. Because of the invention that I created when we were in high school, now they feel like I invented something. They said I was probably one of the first people who taught people to record it. But that's not the point. I feel like this is who they are versus me. They want credit for stuff. They want to be the first at things. They want to invent things. And if they weren't the ones doing it, why are they even involved? Why? Because they want to take that from being about proving that this happens to being about fighting for who gets credit. Do you get what I'm saying? So we're going to go from this is happening, this is real, to who gets the credit, who gets the credit. Before we can give anyone credit, we would have to finally get them to admit they're doing it. And once you admit that this is possible and that they're doing it, that they said this will affect hundreds of millions of people. I'm not sure if it affects hundreds of millions of people, but it's going to affect everyone who said this was happening to them. And I'm telling the world, I'm finding research from decades of people saying this happened to them and they weren't believed. Decades of people going through psychiatric, going to psychiatric units, going on psychiatric medications when they didn't need it. And that's what I'm trying to prove. I'm trying to prove that there are people out there who know how to make people appear mentally ill, who never said a word, who let people lose everything in their lives. And now they're going to try to fight for credit for inventing how to record voices. That's who they are. They're soulless. I'm going to get sick, so I'm going to end this live stream, but hopefully I'll come on again and I will definitely do a review of this gorgeous top. And, oh, I just love it. I just love it. Okay, so I will do a review of the top a little bit later. I'll come back on live, and thank you guys so much for comments, for research, for investigating. I will be back later. Thank you for watching.